Welcome, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of the Oakville Public Library to order for Thursday, the 20th of February, 2025. Before we get into the meeting, I'm going to read our territorial acknowledgement. The Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty Number 14 and Treaty Number 22 treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land that we live on, the water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in Oakville. Madam Committee Clerk, do we have any regrets today?
We do. Councillor Chisholm and Andrew Cashman.
Thank you. I understand Andrew's not feeling well, and our best wishes for a speedy recovery. Any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare tonight? I'm not seeing any. Members of the board, I want to draw your attention to item number 4, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous board meeting from January 16th. Does anybody have any questions, errors, or omissions to report? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please? Thank you, Rod. And over here, thank you, Rebecca. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have a number of items on our consent agenda. In fact, we have, I believe, 6 items. Are there any separations by members of the board? I'm not seeing any. Yes, Meredith.
Just a quick question on 5.3.
It's 5.3. Okay, so that's separated. Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the staff recommendations contained in 5.1, 5.2, 5.4, 5, and 6? Thank you very much, Avis. Seconded by. Thank you, Meredith. All in favor? Those are carried. Just for the sake of the public who might be watching tonight, we've just approved consent item 5.1, which is 2025 Oakville Public Library key board agenda items. 5.2, which is the health and safety report. I'm sorry, which one did you wish to hold again? 5.3. Right, okay. 5.4, the Oakville Public Library procedural bylaws update. 5.5, membership policy, and 5.6, volunteer policy. For those who are watching as well, these are generally items that don't have any sort of significant debate quality or debate necessity. We've already dealt with most of these before, and so it's just a matter of a final approval of the recommendation by staff. Not that we don't love every item equally. Item 5.4 has been held by Meredith for discussion. 5.4.
5.3.
Sorry, 5.3.
It was just a quick question about, I was curious if there's a way to assess upcoming retirements, if the organization has a sense as to kind of what's coming or not, and if you felt that that was a risk for the future.
It is something we keep an eye on, basically looking at people who are coming up to a possible retirement date. Whether they retire or not is up to them, but it is something that we monitor. It's something that we were concerned about more in 2019 going into 2020. We had a significant disproportionate amount of people closer to the end of their career than the beginning or the middle. We're much better aligned. We had a lot of retirements from 2020 up to 2023, 2024. So I do think we're well balanced, but we do monitor that, yes.
Any further questions on 5.3? Okay, Meredith, will you give me a motion to approve the recommendation? Thank you. That's been moved, seconded by Rebecca. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. We do have one confidential consent item at 6.1. It is with respect to Director of Innovation and Integration. There is a staff recommendation on this. It's a consent item, so if you wish to simply approve it now, we can do that, or we can go into camera to discuss it. Your call.
I have a question about it.
You do have a question? Okay, so we'll need to go into a closed session, so I'll take a motion to go into a session closed to the public for the purposes of, let me find the clerk's got to be very organized tonight. I don't know how to deal with it. The motion is to go into closed session as these matters may be considered in the absence of the public under section 16.1 sub 4 of the Public Libraries Act, because 6.1, Director, Innovation and Integration, February 20th, 2025, deals with the following. B, a personal matter about an identifiable individual. That's the motion moved by Celso. Is there a seconder to that, please? Thank you, Rod. All in favor? That's carried. So to the public, we are going to be going into a short, hopefully closed session. So stay tuned. You'll watch a lovely video on glass blowing if you're watching on YouTube. I can actually repeat the video virtually verbatim, but we'll be back as soon as we are concluded on this confidential discussion. So this meeting is moving into closed session. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I'm sorry we interrupted the glass blowing video. I know we are at the absolute critical moment in the video, but you'll be able to come back next month and watch the rest of it. Anyway, we are returning from a session closed to the public. We met in closed session to consider matters related to personal individuals, personal identifiable individuals. And we have concluded our business in that session, and I have a motion that I would like to propose. If somebody would like to move it, I would appreciate it, and that is that the recommendation from the CEO of the Oakville Public Library regarding the hiring of a Director of Innovation and Integration be endorsed. Celso. And who am I going to pick? Bill. Any further discussion? Not that you can have discussion on a confidential motion. All in favor? That's carried. So, would you like to introduce your...
Absolutely.
Your
I'd
new-
love to
your new
officially
successful- your
introduce,
successful-
Monica Sokol, who will be our permanent Director of Innovation and Integration.
Congratulations. It was a hard battle. We just really went into camera just to make you sweat a little bit. Just kidding. Okay, I want to draw your attention to our discussion items. 7.1 is the comprehensive financial report at December 31st, 2024.
So what the board has before them is the year-end comprehensive financial report. So the library ended the year with an unaudited surplus of just over $300,000. The majority of that can be tied back to staffing surpluses. Some of that is a result of the budgeting process and us holding some positions just in case we needed to use them to fill some of the gaps based on where we are. But we ended up in a really good place where we had all hoped. Overall, the reserve fund continues to be healthy. There is a discrepancy between our targeted fundraising target for 2024, but that really accounts to the fact that that position was vacant for about 4 months last year, and bringing Allison on board and getting her up to speed, we've seen exactly where we wanted to be for the last half of the year. So we're excited to see where we go for 2025. Overall, I'm happy to take any questions. Dalabar is also available.
Okay, questions from the board. We'll start with Bill first.
I had a question about the administrative service costs going up 10.6% due to higher, or in part to higher personnel costs for non-union increases and higher spending in part-time wages for human resources. These types of increases, are they expected to continue in 2025, or have we budgeted for that kind of thing? It's just...
One of them depends on the board. And that will be coming via Commissioner Damaso at some point this year. He and I have to talk a little bit about that. Some of that was just a misalignment between what was budgeted and what was actuals. It's a hard thing to kind of put together. And secondary for the part-time wages, that's something that we're looking to operationalize moving forward.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Celso?
I went back to the financial reports of all last year, just to watch the trend on the surplus.
Okay.
So in February, we were signaling, or we were at 280,000 under budget before revenues. In May, 430. In September, 303. And then we ended the year with 339. I think we talked about using some of that for collections at some point in the year, but we were not sure, given that there's, positions open. The question is, if we see the same trend again this year, would we be able to use some of that money for collections earlier?
So we did reassign at least 100,000, if not more than 100,000, towards collections. related to that. Some of the challenge is that we face is the way that it's done. It's how we spend, right? So when we're balancing against actuals, it's to-date spending. Yet collections is a really great example because we do spending by season, right? So if we haven't bought spring by the time different things come, do you know what I mean? Like every spending isn't equal across every single month. And so the challenge that we face is it's really only mid-year that I have a sense about where I'm comfortable about where the surplus is going to be in order to be able to start spending it. And even more so, when we start to reach the end of Q3, which then actually becomes challenging for us to spend where everything arrives by December 31st. So we're trying to get better at doing that. Ideally, and Jeff will know this because he's very familiar, the previous CEO, Lynn Horler, our budget is a promise to the taxpayer. And when we have a surplus, we're not delivering on some of the promises that we're making. So the real goal is to come in, the dream is exactly zero. And so conversations that we have at the board is, can we do a better job with gapping? So as positions become vacant, can we fill them quicker? Or just be able to identify how we can use gapping more effectively, and we're starting to look at that. So I don't know if I answered your question, other than that is something that we're looking to really monitor to become much more efficient at understanding where we can better spend our surplus, and also where we can eliminate the fact that we'll have a surplus. That saying, we will have a surplus for 2025 simply as a result of 16 Mile, because the opening date is
Been
shifted.
pushed out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was coming from, right? Because when we discussed the budget for this year, we had such a hard time, I guess,
Yeah.
trying to fit everything. We had to give up on a few things. And if we see the same kind of surplus trend, I think it's a shame, I guess, to leave that money on the table and not use it towards the promise, as you said. So that's where I was coming from.
And we do budget for $100,000 in gapping. And one of the things that Belinda and I have had repeated conversations about is, can we do more than 100,000? It's been hard to track because we keep waiting for like a stable year in order to be able to predict like what is the average, and then we can budget it in. And so we will aim for that again this year.
Well, one last part of that question, now that you said that because of the delayed 16 Mile, there's going to be a surplus. We deprioritize some of the things during the budget discussion as a result of not having enough and having to meet a certain, should we bring some of that back?
I think that's a conversation we're going to have with the town about whether or not, now that we know that, is the expectation that really the town expects us to have this much as a surplus versus we're going to find a way to kind of use it, because it's not just us, it's recreation will be in the same boat. So it is something that the director of recreation and culture and I have both flagged for a conversation with finance once we get a firmer date.
Fair. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Celso. Over here, Avis?
Just a request, and I should have done a little bit of work before the meeting and gone back to audited financial statements of last year. But I recall that there is, because this is an internal format, there is a little bit of bridging that needs to happen. I mean, the numbers are only going to change slightly if there's an adjustment through the audit. But I think the format in which revenues, for example, are presented and the various reserves are presented. So if it's possible for finance to do a little bit of I don't know, like a scheme, whether it's a bridging schedule, I would call it, something just to show like how to go from the format that we're used to seeing every month to the audited financial statements. I'm a finance person, but I remember I was still having to do a little math. So if I'm having to do that, I'm sure everyone else is too.
I can have that conversation with them for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Avis. Anything further on this? Okay, I have a question. With respect to HIP info, I'm just, the balance of the trust, is that sufficient? It's not really increasing by very much each year. Are we at risk of underfunding this or not having sufficient funds to carry on in the future? I mean, that we're one server crash away from potentially zapping our trust fund. What is the situation there?
So that's one of the things that Monica and Marcus are currently looking into. you'll remember that one of the challenges we had is that the HIP trust was actually way too big.
Right, I remember.
Because we kept collecting money and then not actually, and so we've been actively spending it for the past number of years, trying to figure out what the right size is. The challenge that we face is that the revenue that we now bring in is nowhere close to what it used to be. And a lot of that is due to provincial changes around the 211s and the LINs consolidating and just the need for people to purchase our data. So Marcus has been working with different areas like the region. They support us. They don't support us to the level that we provide services. So we are in talks with them to maybe try to bring those more into alignment about what we provide for them versus what they provide in terms of financial support. Where there are other opportunities for us to maybe shift some revenue for that. I don't think we're necessarily in risk in the next few years, but it is something that we're going to have to take a hard look at, not just us, but also our 4 partners.
Yeah, because I remember when we did have luxury of riches there, and
Yeah.
we clearly are not at the bottom of the can of soup here, but we're certainly approaching that.
Yeah. So
Are the other libraries participating financially?
no,
No.
they provide staff. So both Burlington, Milton, Halton Hills, and the Milton Child Care Service, whose name is slipping
MRC.
my mind.
Yeah, MCRC.
Yes.
Thank you.
They provide staff time to keep the website, the database updated with the community groups in their area.
Okay.
So it's more in kind versus financial.
Okay. And our cost recovery on an annual basis, or this year was, what did we charge back? $42,280? That's our charge back to the trust fund for OPL? Is that correct? Transferred OPL operations?
Yes.
So that's the totality of what we charge back.
Yeah. And it basically pays for half of our database coordinator position.
Right. Marcus isn't contemplated in that.
He is not.
Okay. So we're subsidizing it likely above the other libraries. Is that fair to say?
We are, because as the lead role, we definitely take on more of the burden related to that. The benefit of that, it gives us more control and the ability to definitely focus it more from our perspective. Marcus uses it quite significantly. And how we do that, for example, I was talking with him today, and the Halton Region's opioid table is now connected in and have asked us to do some things, which is, again, speaking to conversations we want to have with the region because they ask us to do these things, and we're happy to do them, but there is a financial gap sometimes for it. But yeah, right now it's really supports the database administrator because it's really focused on the Halton services, the community services database.
We can talk about more of this offline, but can I make a suggestion that you make an application to the Halton Police Board Community Fund?
Okay.
We have a lot of money sitting there right now, and I'm certain that we would be able to, assuming my board colleagues agree, I'm certain we'd be able to provide some funding for that because it's obviously mutually beneficial to public service or public safety and crime prevention. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. I'll come back to the board. Yes, I knew if I talk long enough, Meredith would have a question.
On the HIP as well, just noting, so the federal funding is coming to an end next month. And so, yeah, just the implications of that, like as far as an expenditure, like is there any continuity of the programs that were put in place when the funding was there, or will like the ending of that funding grant mean that associated services will also end, and if there is any, implications for the financial viability of the program with the federal program no longer funding it?
Yeah, so that federal grant was directly related to the InfoPods. Okay. And so there will be a report coming, I think, in March because last time in January, there was multiple questions around infopods, other community groups being interested in infopods. So we are looking at what is the long-term plan. The majority of the existing ones are self-sustainable at this exact moment. There isn't any money to replace them if they break down, but the interface that they use is existing. But we are looking at, okay, what is the asset management timelines for those? But we also have received interest from other organizations about having them. So then the question becomes, okay, how much does it cost for them to buy one? And then what is the maintenance cost that we would need to also charge in order to be able to support more than what we do right now?
And if I can ask one other question. You mentioned earlier just all the other services and, community like databases like this, like 2-in-1, for example. Yep. And so I was just curious, is there like an ongoing assessment? Like, is this providing like a unique value or service that isn't already being provided by some of these other providers?
So we provide our data to 211. Okay. So the community, the records that we have, they go up to 211. So if we didn't have them, 211 wouldn't have them. Gotcha. So that is one of the key benefits. Service Oakville uses it as well. We do train community groups, churches. I think we might even done different members of different areas of the police as well. Just for that, if somebody comes with a problem, here is a central database about services accessible for people in Halton, versus it can get quite complex. And we've created a number of portals over the years to try and simplify things. So if you're a senior, or we just are in the process of creating one, if you have an issue with opioid addiction, teens, new parents, that there's specialized portals for you to be able to access. Newcomers is another great one related to that. So there is some customization versus 2-on-1, which tends to be a bigger organization.
Right. Okay.
We do try and it is a collaboration though. It isn't a competition.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Further questions? Not seeing any, so I'll look for a motion to approve the recommendation, which is simply a receive for feedback. Celso and Bill, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. You guys are my stars tonight. Okay, we're moving on to 7.2, which is a prioritization of the short-term parks, recreation, and libraries master plan actions. We've learned lots about this. We participated. It's been presented to council, and now we're talking about priorities.
Absolutely. So this was actually a request that council made, and since there was a report going to council on Monday, I figured the board should also get one. Mm-hmm. So I've just taken the report that Commissioner Tomasso wrote and basically pared it down to just be focused on the library, just to really show what our short-term action plans are for the master plan. So we've kind of indicated some of the things that was in the master plan were already things that were in progress or things that we do currently take into account. But there are other very specific things that we've been trying to plan out based on capacity. So just presenting you what our current targets are as in relation to the recommended actions as part of the master plan.
Okay, questions? Celso?
So some of these actions, you mentioned that some of them are already in progress. That's good. Some of them are planned out for next year and the year after. And two examples that came to me were expanded technology of 2026 and future operating hours for 2027. The question is, are they going to put pressure on our budget? Because that would require additional operating costs, no?
Absolutely. One of the things that we have heard repeatedly is a request for more hours. And one of the things that we wanted to do as part of the service delivery review is really take a look at that, at which point we could take it to the board and to council as based on the recommendations from that to consider whether or not there was financial possibility to increase our hours. And so that's really the first step for the ask. To know what the ask is. And that really is targeted at the, if you'll remember, we asked for $100,000 related to master plan recommendation funding for 2026. So if that moves forward, then we would use some of that $100,000 to do part of that review. That would then go as part of the 2027 budget request to be implemented in 2028.
Thank you.
Thanks, also. Further questions? Meredith?
Okay, it was just clarifications to understand, because there's a lot of content in here.
Yeah.
My first question was about action number 39, and I just was wondering if you could, it refers to place-based programming, and I was wondering if you could explain what that meant.
So place-based programming is the new name for community-based programming. So basically, you're talking with your community about what type of programming they're interested in. It's just the new name.
Okay. And then I had one other quick question, and that was, there was sorry, I just lost where it was. There was a reference to a newcomer strategy, and I wasn't sure, I didn't recall seeing or knowing that we had a newcomer strategy. So maybe that had been shared with us previously and I just hadn't shared, but I was wondering if that was something new or if that was something that has always existed.
So that's 42.
Yes,
we
42.
We do not have what I would call a strategy in place. We do newcomer services, and it's something that we are consistently engaging in. But in terms of an overarching strategy, we don't have one, and that's why I think it's targeted for 2027. Again, hopefully some of the funding that hopefully we get in 2026 would be used to help us flesh out exactly what that strategy would entail.
Okay, thank you.
But the key message, the key takeaway there is that we do have an ad hoc plan to deal with newcomers and help them navigate through the library system, et cetera.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Further comments or questions? Bill?
Just thinking about this, the operating hours again, I've always wondered, how do our hours compare to other, local library hours? Are we open longer, or?
I'm trying to remember. We did a review a number of years ago. The board, I can't remember the exact timing, but the board may or may not remember. Coming out of COVID, we did a review and we did some adjustments. So you will see branches like White Oaks open at 10, where Central opens at 9:30.
Right.
And then reallocated some of those dollars so that Iroquois Ridge and Glen Abbey are open till 6 on Fridays versus 5.
Right.
So we have made some shifting to kind of do that coming out of COVID, because it was a great opportunity because we hadn't had consistent hours in a couple of years.
Right.
Overall, I think we're in line with Burlington. The real demand comes for Sunday. We're open 4 hours on Sunday, 1 to 5. There are libraries that are open 9:30 to 5. Those are the hours we're open to on Saturday. Though that tends to be the biggest comment I get from members of the public. Families want to have more access to it. Beyond that, I also hear a lot about late night. Students in particular they just want a place to study. At that point, it just becomes, they just want a place that they can go and access. And so as part of what we're looking to review is different options about how we could provide that and what people would be expecting if you're open from like 8 to midnight, what services would they actually be looking for and how we could potentially meet that capacity. Because sometimes people, they just want someplace to study.
Yeah, it's tough.
Sunday's the big one. We hear a lot about Sunday.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of pressure to extend, because that's the way things are these days. So, okay, thanks.
Further comments or questions? Rod?
I just wondered, Tara, your sense for this, I think there's about 30 action high priorities and about 14 or 15 actions here, along with all the other strategies and goals and objectives the library have. For example, there's some more coming up later in this meeting on DEI. How much of a reach is some of all of this for your excellent team and you to achieve? It seems to me when we go to these meetings, we're often looking at large numbers of objectives, goals, and strategies, and here's just another group, which are all excellent, and I think they may well be achievable, but I just wondered what your sense is about the strain that puts on your staff to get all this done and have a reportable, achievable item at the end of whenever the reporting year is. What's the sort of sense on that?
It's definitely a challenge. We've gotten better the past number of years as creating like a one-year initiative framework that we start doing the year before to really identify, okay, what are we capable of taking on? What is that going to look like? Really mapping it out, the different projects to understand, okay, this is going to be laborsome here. This we're going to have a break. We can bring this on, and really trying to track those pieces a little bit better. It's also understanding what we can do that's not a full-on initiative, but just tweak our current processes. And you see some of that that we identify as part of like the customer satisfaction survey, right? Like there's nothing that I'm really looking to do as a major project, but the feedback we can action in small little ways, incorporate it through like training or redesigning a space that's a relatively contained piece versus these bigger pieces. I'm also getting better at doing long-term planning, because a couple of years ago, we would have tried to do all of this next year. And so we've had better success in conversations with my colleagues at as part of the community services team at being more realistic. Mm-hmm. What do we have the capacity to do? What is that? And conversations with the counselors about what is realistic based on some of the things that we know that community members need. Because I did get an email a couple of weeks ago from someone who's seated in council and the mayor and was really upset with our hours. And again, it's like we have this this is our plan, and unfortunately we can't really shift it. We know that there's a gap, but just based on capacity, that's the time. It can be a challenge for sure.
Great answer, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rod. Further questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. Can I get a motion to receive the item for feedback? Thank you very much, Rebecca, who's seconding this for me. Thank you, Avis. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving on to 7.3. That's the Performance and Measures Annual Report. Tara?
So this follows up really well with what we just talked about, and that we achieve a lot in a year. Yeah. And this performance, the 2024, I'm really pleased with where we ended up for 2024. I'm really excited about where we're going to go for 2025. We've seen significant uptake and improvement almost entirely across the board, and then I know that we're planning very specific kind of pieces in order to address some of the gaps that we do see, particularly related to programming. We're seeing improvements to it, but I think we can do better in terms of programming, just being more, we've talked about this before, more well-rounded in our programming and not so focused on children's programming. We bring in more teens, more adult. We started to do that at the end of last year. That's something that we'll continue to push through for this year. One thing that we don't do as part of this structure is report on households. That will be added in as part of the Q1 you'll be getting in May with that. And so we continue to track different things, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I lost my train of thought, sorry.
Questions? Okay, Meredith?
One comment, one question. Mm-hmm. On the programming, when I read it, and it, that seeing that there was such a core of children's programming, and so just I think it's interesting just to also unpack that there's clearly like such an appetite for children's programming. So while it's nice to complement it with others, I think it's also good to just also recognize that there is like a true and a clear and present need for children's programming for parents of young kids on PD days, on morning things with young children, that it almost like wonder, I'm curious even if there's like wait lists for, or if you're at capacity for the programs that you have now, and to just sort of understand and just reflecting on my own experience as, being at home with kids versus later, there's just in different life stages, you have a different appetite for programming, and certainly for children, there's, parents are actively seeking out that and really do enjoy the programming that you offer.
Yeah, it is. That'll be the struggle, right? Is to find that balance where we're still opening, we're still offering enough children's programming. But right now it is, I think it's almost like 80% of our programming is focused at children. Whereas you look at the demographics of Oakville, that doesn't necessarily align. So just how do we better balance it out? And we've done a number of things throughout the year, and I don't know offhand Glen Abbey regularly would have wait lists, but then we introduced running a story time at 10 and 10:30, and so that helped address some of those. It used to be just 10:30, and then people would show up and not be able to do it. And we used to be registered for those things, and now we moved to drop-in, because problem with registration is half the people would show up, and then you'd still have vacant spots, whereas the drop-in allows for a bit more flexibility. So we continue to try different things in order to really maximize those pieces. But yeah, like we had family day programming at Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge on Monday, and it was small. It was school-age kids and below, right? That were really looking for like our, what did we have? It was like family day dance party.
Right.
Was basically what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just really great that you offer such great programming for free. And I
Yeah.
think there is, a lot of families who really genuinely need that type of programming that's accessible to all. So it's great that you're seeing such a great response and that parents are seeking you out. Yeah, amazing. Okay, I think that's it.
Thanks, Meredith. Anything further? Rebecca?
I just wanted to add to that because I think by focusing on those children's programs, you're creating that safe space for the kids later on. Those are the kids that are probably looking to come there late at night because they know that that's a place that they can go. So I think it's a good long-term strategy for creating users in the future.
Yeah.
Yep. Further questions? Bill?
So the card holders, the new card holders, between 2019 and 24, they were up 28%, and 2023 to 24 was down 2%, which seems very odd to me. And I was just wondering why that was happening, because it just doesn't really make sense. I mean, active card holders went up. All card holders went up, but the new card holders went down. I just wondered if there was anything that...
I'm not sure I can give you an answer to that off the top of my head. I'd
Okay.
have to look into it a little bit more, but we can get back to you.
Yeah. Because there was a push for new card holders, right? So I was just wondering.
Bookmobiles and stuff. Yeah.
Anyway, that's fine. You
Okay.
can get back. No problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything further?
Nope.
Okay. Avis?
Just on that same note, like while you're looking into it, I was just wondering, with the new card holders that you did gain, is there a relationship to some of the initiatives that you had, like the book bikes and other things where people could sign up? Like, do you have any data around that?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've been looking at, how we can track better. It's next to when we don't ask people when they register for a card how they found out about it. We were trying to figure out with the book bikes if they were registering cards, if there was a way to kind of track it. But you can also register online. So a lot of times people come up and said, oh, well, just go online and register for it. But it's hard to tell exactly what's coming from, oh, I saw them in the park and now I'm going to go register for a card. So it is something that we're looking into to hopefully being able to improve that piece. That being said, I feel pretty confident in saying that they did have an impact. We saw a significant increase with households, which are card holders. As a result, what was that, like a 20? It was a 7% increase, I think, in 2024 across the households, which was an additional over 4,000 households, which at the bare minimum would have been an additional 4,000 cards. Those households could, of course, have more than one card as well.
Thanks, Avis. I just have a question with respect to the conclusions around the access to, there's a number of the digital programs are in the negatives, which surprised me. So, it's not a big one. It could be a rounding error on the digital circulation, down 2%. And then there's a couple others were very similar in terms of digital collections. Is that, And I'm reading your analysis, and it talks about lack of interest or not as much demand for databases. I'm still discovering that people in the community are not aware that these facilities are available. So my conclusion from reading this and even my own anecdotal information is that we're still not doing enough to get this information out to the public. When I do turn people onto the fact that they can access LinkedIn Learning for free, they're like all over it.
Yeah.
And they keep sending me copies of their certificates they've earned. We need to do, I think we need to do more in this. Do you have any comment on that? Like how might we reach out and better let people know that these resources are available?
There are definitely some that we're looking at how we can better advertise them, LinkedIn Learning being one.
Yeah.
Hoopla is a bit of a challenge because it's a great product, but we're board remember we're restructuring some of that because of some of the limitations around how that is funded. When we're talking about databases, what we're primarily talking about there is like academic OneFile.
Right. Oh.
And again, and more of those academic ones that students used to use on a regular basis, they don't use them. And so that's really what's dropping some of those pieces. So we're really looking at, because some of them are quite expensive. Yeah. Should we be funding them, and then could we put that money towards where we're seeing some of that growth, which is more around entertainment media than research paper pieces.
My second, it's okay. I know you're about to jump on my time, so just kidding. Okay, so the overall, where is it? I'm just going back to the page here. So a 2% decrease is not a lot in terms of circulation, but I mean, that's one area that I was expecting to see an increase. You know, is this a similar trend in other libraries? Are people just becoming more turned on by physical copies of books and hard copies of materials, or is this related to the lack of licenses for ebooks and such? Like, how do you explain that beyond the commentary here? Because it's incongruent where we are as a society right now.
And some of it is because it can be any of those things, and I think we're struggling a little bit to identify them. If I, at the top of my head, I haven't talked with surrounding libraries. We can absolutely take a look at that. But it's sometimes some of our numbers get, I don't know if conflated is the right word, but for example, when we launched the digital newspapers, right? People jump on it, and then it calms down until you get the people who use it regularly, right? And so sometimes that can be that shift. I also think people are really going back to physical books.
Really?
And some of that is the amount of time that we're spending on screen. If you were at our book sale started today, if you were at Central, you would know that books were definitely still popular. The book sales continue to be extremely well attended. But it is really hard to dig in and find a specific cause. Hoopla, we are restricting, for lack of a better term, what people will have access to via Hoopla. That they will still have access to it via Cloud Library. The difference being is that Hoopla is instantaneous, and Cloud Library you may have to wait a year, and that becomes the challenge. And how do you balance? You know, I want the late Onyx Storm is a great example. If you were to put a hold on that, I think it's a 2-year wait in order to get Onyx Storm, and that's just how many copies can we really buy to do that? It never, I will say, if anybody's watching, it never ends up being 2 years because people read it fast and return it. So it always gets returned after 3 weeks, and so it'll be less than that. But when you place a hold on it, it will tell you that right now, based on the holds in front of you, if everybody takes the full 3 weeks, it'll take 2 years for you to get that book.
My next question should be, what the heck is Onyx Storm? But I'm going to skip that for right now.
You're not on book talk.
I'm not on book talk, I'm sorry.
It's the book right now.
Pardon me?
It's the book right
Yeah,
now.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ultimately bodes well because obviously hard copy books are cheaper than the digital licenses.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a good thing and we shouldn't complain too much, but certainly I think it warrants some further digging into it because I said it's kind of incongruent where we are as a society. And I'm just curious if we're missing the boat somewhere, maybe our call, and it would be good to validate with other libraries if you can.
Yeah.
With my thoughts.
can
Okay,
do that.
I'm done. I'm going to return to Rebecca now.
Thank you. I was just, speaking of physical copies for books, I was just at my son's basketball tournament, and there were a bunch of the younger siblings there, and they all had physical books. And I wondered, is it just like our age group that reads like digital, like has Kindles and things like that? Or do kids actually get digital books? Because my kids don't. If they have a book, they have a book.
Yeah.
So that's just like putting it out there. But back to what you were saying about like the databases and stuff, I just thought while you were talking about that and speaking of, you know, creating more programming for older adults, maybe using some of that funding from the databases just to explore and teach people the new ways that people are looking for data, say with ChatGPT or like other online databases that, you know, maybe you don't have to pay for, but you're teaching people how to like look for information, which is exactly what libraries do.
Yeah.
So that was just my thought on that.
No, it's a good point, and honestly, if you've ever had to use some of those databases, you know why people don't use them anymore, because you can type it into Google or some of those. You need to be trained on how to use them.
Yeah.
They're not easy.
Well, that's
So.
why you need a librarian
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah.
That's a good point too, and that could be a part of the reason why they're dropping in popularity as well, because Dr. Google is always available.
Their algorithms are not nearly as sophisticated as
Yeah.
where you can find elsewhere, right? So.
Anything further on this matter? Meredith?
Yeah, and just like looking closer at the digital circulation and seeing that ebooks and audiobooks are up over last year, e-newspapers are up over last year, e-learning is up over last year, e-movies and e-music is up over last year, but databases are down, and last year databases were more than double ebooks and e-audiobooks. That just really surprises me. Like, were they really such a substantial part of our
Yeah.
digital collection?
So again, it's the challenge we face is the statistics we get come from the vendors, and we can't necessarily tell them what we want to count. So for a lot of these vendors, it's articles accessed. So if you ever remember writing a paper, you can click through 20 different articles before you find one you want to use. Yet each one of those is the equivalent of checking out a book. Ooh. Right? So it is a bit of a misnomer, because you can just be clicking them, and yet each one is counting as a statistic. So we have no choice but to relate them, yet they're not necessarily like for like, if that makes sense.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Interesting. Are DVDs still a thing at the library?
Surprisingly, yes, they are.
I know the children's ones are, but are the adult, are what, not adult, we don't have adult videos, but are the general interest DVDs still a heavy draw?
I would say yes. Like looking at the audiovisual here, audiovisual would basically be CDs and DVDs at this point. CDs still continue to surprise me, and how they go out. They're harder to get, so that will eventually go out. But DVDs still tend to be pretty solid. I'd have to look to see what the breakdown is, whether or not it's children's DVDs that are running that, because we all had like the Barney VHS that would just, you ran until it died. And so there's a lot of DVDs that are like that right now.
For my family, it was Sleeping Beauty.
Right?
Just,
There's
you know,
always the one.
Yeah.
But we could take a deeper look into exactly what genres make up those DVDs.
That was more of a matter of curiosity. Just a tip for board members, the definitions page in this report, you should definitely pull that out and keep it close at hand, because it's very helpful. I found this one of the best documents you've circulated. It helps really describe, like, provide nomenclature, clarity for reports going forward. Good document. Thank you. Motion to receive the information, please. Thank you, Rebecca and Meredith. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, very interesting item here, customer satisfaction survey 2024 results.
So this ties into the OPL goals for 2024. And originally it was just going to be in that document, but it actually ended up being, I think, big enough to stand on its own report. So I wanted to give that to you. So we launched this in very late March. So the numbers in front of you are basically from April to the end of the year. We received approximately 61 surveys. The platform allows for 3 different types of surveys. It allows for a short survey, a medium survey, and a long survey. And the majority of them were either the medium or the long. So some of the benefits, even though 261 isn't a ton, people who fill them out really have something that they want to tell you, and are really passionate enough to share that information. The long one is long. And asks all kinds of questions. And it was really interesting to kind of dig through and just see some of the comments. Some of them were unsurprising and aligned with even some of the work that we'd been doing. You guys board will remember we showed you some of the tweaks we'd made to Woodside and White Oaks just in terms of seating and trying to make that a bit more flexible and welcoming space. And that was reflected. And so we're like, already we're connecting on that, but it did all allow us to identify some other areas for improvement as we move forward. Again, as we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, not necessarily looking for major projects, but as we implement new projects or new initiatives or have conversations with staff to put these in, is there themes that we can put in through our training or small shifts that we can do that can make significant improvements for the customer experience. So,
Comments or questions? Also then Bill?
On the facilities satisfaction portion of it, there's something that jumped out of the page for me, which was this question about facilities for security of personal belongings being the lowest, yet facilities for security of library materials is pretty fairly. Should we be concerned about theft going on inside our facilities?
We haven't, as far as I know, we haven't had a report of anything being stolen. I think that probably aligns there are some libraries who have lockers for people to store, or ability to have people to store. And even today I was up at Central, and there was somebody who had their whole setup and ran over the desk and was like, is it okay if I leave my stuff? I need to run to the bathroom. And the staff are like, if you feel comfortable. Because again, we're not promising to monitor it.
Yeah.
I think the risk is somewhat low, but we can't make any promises. I think that's the concern, is that if I walk away, I'm not confident my stuff is secure. There's no place to secure my things rather than something's been stolen, because there has been no incidents that I'm aware of where something has been stolen.
Thank you.
Bill?
You're right, though, about people leaving stuff at those tables. I mean, people do it all the time, and I've never seen an issue with any of that. And I always wonder about these surveys completed for everything. I mean, just whenever we go out to talk to the public, and there's hardly anybody shows up, and I just thought 261 completed surveys seemed kind of low for a town of 220,000 people, but I'm always told that actually this is kind of a typical thing. But anyway, it just always gets to me that so many people don't actually complete these things. And the other thing was that the website got a 6.79 out of 10. So, was that kind of anticipated, or what do you think of that?
I wasn't surprised. I don't think any of us were. The board may recall that we've been making changes to the website, particularly around the main page, how you enter, how you get to information, because we do hear comments that people are finding information hard to find, not sure where to go. So there's been a lot of improvements in terms of like the front space when you first get on, making it easier to navigate, creating a news section, a project section so that people can kind of find that. So we've been tweaking that, and we'll continue to make improvements as we get feedback.
Right. Right.
Yeah, our website is just the depth and breadth of the information on it, and one of the reasons that Monica's been actively improving the search interface as well, to make it easier to find.
Right. Right. Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Further comments or questions? Okay, I do. I have a couple on the same topics on facilities and service satisfaction. So on facilities, I also noted the restrooms. This is a strange question, but restrooms being 6.58, is that largely central, because they're terrible? I mean,
you're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, these are how are we addressing that? Because that's a pretty low score, I think.
It is, the challenge is that we're struggling to figure out, to identify what, I have to figure out whether or not we can break it down to figure out if they've identified the location to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, is it central, or is it another location? In order to figure out what the problem is, because the washrooms at Central are unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure entirely how to fix them. Because some of them, for those of you who are unaware, some of the toilets in the women, like they're slanted, and they can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a cleanliness issue, because there are a lot, staff tend to keep pretty close eye on them, and are quick to bring it to facilities' attention if they aren't clean. But yeah, I'll have to dig into that one a little bit more.
I mean, I used to have complaints from parents about the security in particularly Central's washrooms. You addressed that, though, the issue I brought to you, which was the stall or the dividers for the urinals.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, other than the fact that they're antiquated, maybe crooked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, our new model moving forward, and 16 Mile is all individual stalls.
Yeah. Good. I just know from my private sector work, bathrooms mean everything to your customers. And
Yes.
You can
Yes.
lose customers if
Yeah.
the bathroom experience is poor.
The majority of them, I would say, aren't. I can't think of ones besides Central that would be a major concern.
Okay,
but-
thank you. Library's website, I just want to echo that.
Yeah.
That's really disturbing to me. We spent so much time and energy on trying to get this website perfected. I mean, that is an alarming number for a new website which has been tweaked and such. Is it possible to do a focus group potentially to explore that further and find out what, instead of working anecdotally on what we think the issue is, maybe we need to do a deep dive, because that's a very important part of our offering. Is it possible to do like a focus group and have people, and talk to people about what the issues are with the website? Maybe do a specific survey about the website?
Yeah, we could look at doing something like that.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe incent participation with a contest, like
Right.
you get a Canadian Tire gift card for the, a chance at Canadian Tire,
Yep.
gift card or something like that, just to get people, to try to increase the participation rate.
Yeah.
Because that's disappointing, particularly in light of the effort that was put into it and the money we've spent on that.
I know that we were looking at, Monica and I have a couple conversations about creating personas and then doing some testing versus personas to understand, like, is it universal?
Yeah.
Or are there particular groups that are struggling to use it or can't
I think that's a good
access it?
idea as well,
Yeah.
because it may be that it's one specific demographic it's just not jiving with, so.
Yeah.
I think it's worth doing a deep dive and trying to figure out how to perfect that and spend some time on it.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Another inspirational.
You
last
really
question. I know, I'm the guy
Yeah.
that just turns on
Your
the questions.
spark.
Rebecca,
Thank you. Did the website part also include the app?
That's a good question. I'm not, it talks about the website, but that doesn't mean that people don't conflate it with the app.
And I only say that because I only use the app, and I know that there's been like some outages,
Yeah.
like where you can't get onto the app. And so I'm just wondering if like people are equating that as well with like just not being able to access things. Because there have been times just where I've wanted to like check the status of whatever. And so I'm just wondering if people are thinking of both.
You bring up a good point, and I think that we could validate that with some focus groups. Is one of the other challenges that we have is there's the website that we control, and then there's where we link to Bibliocommons, which is the catalog. And
Good
if people
point.
are unhappy with the catalog, that we have less of an ability to impact that, or whether or not we're connecting to another third-party site like our program registration, Communico, or some of those other kind of pieces. But that can only happen through conversations.
or any of the services that we spawn into, like
Yes.
Hoopla or Overdrive or whatever
Yeah.
the case is. So that's a good point. So I think that reinforces the importance of maybe doing a deep dive on this.
To understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
I saw
And
your
I-
mic go off, so I thought you were done.
Oh no, I just didn't want to heavy breathe into it.
Oh, that's,
Um,
yep. We have complaints about that.
I just, along with that, and I didn't notice it here, but the ability to not be able to return a book when the book returns, when that is down and not being able to return it. I don't know where that would fall in here, but I know, like, personally, I a few times, especially at Iroquois Ridge, it's down a lot. And if I go after hours, I can't return my books. So again, I don't know where it would fall in here, but I think in general, it kind of falls under just like not being able to control technology all the time, right? And offer the services. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to receive this report. It's a receive, right? Yes, it's received for information. Rebecca, since you're the final speaker, do you want to make the motion, please? Who's going to second? Meredith, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. And you don't need a specific direction to follow up on those. You've just taken note. Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to item number 7.5. That's the 2024 OPL goal update.
So this is the year-end report for the OPL goals that the board set for us last year. Overall, I think we were quite successful in achieving what we could. There were some unfortunate challenges that did limit it for some of us. For some of the projects, overall central project is going as well as it can. Related to that, the community engagement piece was quite successful. We've gotten some really positive feedback about how we've approached that, and we've taken the learnings about how we will go around for the second round once we have concept drawings that we're ready to take forward to the public. And we've gotten some pretty great response from making the public engagement summary and the Indigenous engagement summary public, which again has prompted some really great conversations. The capital campaign continues. We've gotten a ton of interest. We're just trying to slowly build those relationships to take it from interest to action. And so we're hoping to make some movement on that throughout this year, which I suspect will be helped as we move towards conceptual, and people can really start to see it and dig out detailed design to really start to have conversations if people are interested in particular areas. Getting in with us early would allow them for it to be a collaborative process versus later on. So we're continuing to build those relationships. We just talked about cardholder growth. Overall, that was quite successful. Just in case anybody's wondering, that the number that we used for 2024 was the year-end number for 2023, that Oakville had 77,000 households. We've just updated that. Planning just gave me the new number for 2024, which is 80,000. So our new starting point for households as of the beginning of 2025 is we're at 54%, because we dropped because households went up. But that will be another main focus for us this year to continue to grow that. We already talked about the customer satisfaction. We've gotten strong feedback around the onboarding programs that have been launched, and so we're excited to continue that process. And then the DEI has been quite successful as well. I did mention in a previous one that for 2025, the DEI group was looking to set their own. And we are hoping that they will do that. We have had some changeover in that team, and in fact, we put a call out for that team earlier this year, and we got a significant amount of interest, which is really, really exciting. But that new group is only meeting for the first time in March, so I'm going to sit down with them, have a conversation, and so it may be a revamped kind of goals for them, being that more than 80% of the team will be new. In order to be able to do that. But once we have that, I'll absolutely bring it to the board, because I know already how many, they have some really, really great ideas.
Great. Questions? Rebecca?
For the DEI group, because there's been so much in the news about businesses cutting back on DEI measures, is there a way that you can publicize some of those initiatives, even just saying that you've kind of doubled down on having this group, just to let the public know that it's still very much a priority for the Oakville Public Library? And not against anybody else, but just putting it out there that, because I think maybe that's why you got so much interest, internally, just because people have heard so much about how businesses are cutting back.
American businesses.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. I mean, we do, Black History Month, we tend to really identify what the cultural or different priorities are each month, and kind of put those out. But we can definitely take a look and see how we can maybe add a bit of that group's flavor. To date, they've been really focused on internal, but I can have a conversation with them about what they'd be comfortable with. Yeah.
Thanks. Further questions or comments? Thank you, Celso.
On the customer satisfaction goal, so it says that OPL introduced a customer satisfaction survey, which you did, and we just talked about, and then monitor how customers use and feel. We did that, and then metrics gathered will then be used to identify areas of improvement or growth. So we put the spotlight on the website and the washrooms.
Yeah.
But the question is there a plan, I guess, for the areas of improvement that came out of this survey that will drive actions into the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I did try in that report, I did list a number of actions that we were going to take directly related to, let me pull it up because I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, so enhanced facility comfort, kind of we talked about continuing to do the work that we've done at some of the branches, really taking a look at that space, increase awareness campaigns, and increase staff engagement with customers. I'll also take what the board has brought forward and bring that as well. Yes, yeah. That next steps is really the actions that we're taking in order to try and push those lower markers up.
Okay, clear now. Thank you.
Thanks, Celso. Further comments or questions? Motion. Oh, Bill, go ahead.
The capital campaign piece. So in Q3 with the open house, and there was some really good feedback with that. And then it says in Q4, it held conversations with individuals interested in learning about potential options and stuff like that. So how did those go? I mean, were people, does it seem like there's quite a few folks that are interested in the options available to them, or?
Yeah, I mean, we had some conversations.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of back and forth, really trying to move forward. A couple of them have been organizations. And so they've identified that they would like for me to come and present and make a case in front of the full membership. And so we're waiting on some proposed dates for me to do that. So I think that's quite promising.
Yeah.
We actually had, following the donor open house, we actually had a number of people make donations, which was nice related to that. We've had a couple organizations, businesses that have come, and they're waiting to see the concept. I think they're waiting for the visualization. I've reached out where I know that other banks in the area, because if you go to, when we were at Halifax or some of the others, every bank had a room. And so starting to have those conversations. Sometimes part of the time it takes to get to the right person.
Right.
And so we've started that process, reaching out to the connections that I have, and then connecting in, and sometimes it can take some time for that. I'm really hoping that once we get the concepts, I can set meetings, take people out for coffee, have some conversations to really drum up, because I do think when we bring a design forward, that's really drives excitement, and people may want to really take it to that next step. Other than, that's a really great idea, I'm interested in it, but it's still this ambiguous thing that's far in the future.
Yeah, no, it's good. That bank idea is a good idea because they don't want to be left out.
If anybody knows anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Those banks.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the retirees.
Yeah, exactly.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll look for motion to receive the report, please. Nobody, don't hurry. Avis, Bill, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, everybody's favorite part of the meeting, the CEO update.
One thing that's not in the CEO update that is in the report, just to flag that the renovations underway at Iroquois Ridge, we're still, it is very likely that, because there will be jackhammering involved, so we will be closed during that day, because even though we could rope it off, nobody wants to be in there during that jackhammering. We're just trying to get some certainty around the dates, and we'll let you know, but it will be an advanced closure, likely for 1 or 2 days. But So just some project updates. 16-mile construction project. We're still, J.R. Curtis gave us an updated timeline, but it was their best guess. They are now still actively working with their trades to validate it. However, it is shifting further into fall. So we're keeping a close eye on that. But in the meantime, we are working on a recruitment plan because we do suspect that there will be a lot of movement throughout the entire system, people really interested to go to the new branches. We're working really closely with Recreation around their timelines. Also understanding what other positions we want to bring on sooner rather than later. We're about to go out and post for the manager of that because there's a lot of planning still to happen that's needed, and they'll take a key role in the recruitment pieces. And there are identifying what are the planning positions that will need to come in multiple months in advance and what are the operational that will come in just before we open. We are estimating that it will take approximately 2 months from when we get substantial completion to when we open. So fingers crossed, we'll get some lockdown dates in the next little bit. In the meantime, we are putting out the RFP for the opening day collection. As you can imagine, that is a significant piece, and timing for it is relatively sensitive because we don't want to have to store all that material. So we're kind of getting it ready to the point where it should be able to go in and turn that around relatively quickly if as needed.
Before you leave that, we shifted, I guess, from Q3 to Q4.
Yes, we have.
So what happens with the money that we fought for in terms of the additional funding for operations? Because that was for 2025 budget. So
it was into 2025. It will have to impact 2026 simply because we're hiring, right? So that was one of the conversations that I think back and forth with finance is that commitment in 2025 then makes a requirement that needs to happen for 2026 with the full annualization of that, and they recognize that.
Okay.
What we need to talk about is if there is a month or two savings for that, is that something that we can then reallocate, or is it because the project has shifted that the town is going to be, at least this much of your surplus needs to go and then goes into the tax stabilization to fund other things because simply it's not being actualized in that time frame.
Right.
But that's the joy of construction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something for us to be aware of as we move forward, because we were supposed to have substantial completion in April. So we knew that wasn't going to be the case going into next year, or else we would have quite the surplus for 2024. But I suspect those will be ongoing challenges, and even more so given the current environment in North America. So something that I think Facility Services is keeping a very close eye on. The good news is that the majority of risk for any further delay isn't there because all the major materials have arrived. Because remember, it was the steel and then the glass. The glass has fully arrived. So the majority of that stuff now it's more along the lines of, and less for us, but for example, Recreation in terms of their specialized equipment. I know that they're really looking at, okay, how do we order that and get it in, at least in the queue for some of their exercise equipment or those types of pieces. New Central project. So the board got the update in January. We're still waiting on the the structural report before we resume concept design. We are expecting to get that at the very end of March. So when I have a better sense of where we're going with that, I'll update the board. The asbestos removal is complete, so that's exciting. And now we are in the process, just because we're waiting for structural doesn't mean the project comes to a full halt. What we're doing now is clarifying the top of bank requirements with Conservation Halton, because it's come to our attention that what was agreed upon and there's a new requirement. So we're just trying to get a better sense of what that actually looks like, because their new requirement may impact design. The newspaper digitization project, the contract, there was a delay in finalizing the contract with the board members. We expected to finalize that in January, but there was a lot of back and forth between purchasing and the vendors. around insurance. But the contract has been finalized, and the kickoff meeting is set for, I think, next week on Monday. And then right now, we are anticipating that the vendor will remove and secure the newspapers by the end of March. So we're very much looking forward to that. And then, because the board asked about this last time, the board we are following up with the other libraries that are currently negotiating with Torstar on public access, and that will bring an update on that piece to the board in March. We're just trying to figure out where everybody is to understand the conversation we want to have the board about next steps regarding public access.
Since other libraries are having that same issue, is it possible to engage OLA for some collective lobbying, or maybe take a unified approach to Metroland as we're dealing with this, instead of dealing on a one-off basis?
Yeah, we can definitely have that conversation. Some of the challenges is that nobody has the exact same relationship with Torstar, or the exact same type of content. I think we'll have a better sense once we get a current update and a recap of. I have to remind myself exactly what everybody's current situation is, and see where we can find alignment, because maybe it's even like, okay, can we get a legal opinion, a broader legal opinion, and then it's a group of libraries that are trying to push that conversation.
Because one library in a medium-sized town may not have the same influence as, 15 libraries across the province or something like that.
Yep, no, it's a good idea. The Trafalgar Urban Core South, there's not an update. Legal and Branthaven continue to finalize the purchase agreement. Branthaven has been otherwise occupied with some requirements from site plan, and so they're working through that. But I did talk with the Realty Council for the town, and he is hoping, he's expecting that he's going to meet with them again the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we can get that signed. That way we can move on to some of the next steps with that. But until they figure out their site plan, it's not delaying us in any way, because they need to figure out their site plan first anyway. So February is Black History Month, and we're doing all kinds of fun things. We have the Black Canadian Innovation program. The Bronte Book Hub is focusing on The Vanishing Half. What that you haven't read, you should. And then we also have journalist Janelle Levy that's coming out on the 26th. One thing that have been working on with the website is we actually just introduced a OPL history timeline. It's something that I've been wanting to have up on the website for a while. I've seen really nice ones at other libraries that just kind of talk about the history of the library from when it was founded all the way to today. Feel free to take a look. It highlights when every new branch opened, as well as major pieces. There's some interesting little facts in there about some instances where Oakville was first in the province to do some exciting things. So it's a fun read.
Can I ask, when you in that history, are you keeping in mind the fact that Oakville is an amalgamation of two municipalities, and that Trafalgar Township needs to be recognized in that as well, since it was actually the largest of the municipalities during the merger in 1962? So I mean, everybody focuses on Oakville, but Oakville is not just Oakville in terms of history. It's Oakville and Trafalgar.
Well, this is the history of the Oakville Public Library.
Right. I get it, but
and so that would impact.
But it would have merged with whatever Trafalgar Library assets would have had at that point. Okay. Because the entire municipal organization, and I guess all its affiliates, like the library, would have also been part of that amalgamation.
Okay. If it's not in there, I can check in with Elise.
Yeah. Elise would definitely know.
Well, Elise did this.
Yeah,
so,
she's very up on Trafalgar
Yeah.
history, but it'd be good if you could look into that.
Okay, we'll do. Next week is Freedom to Read Week. So it is an annual national event across Canada where libraries remind people the importance that libraries play in intellectual freedom, and the importance that we have as a democracy to be able to read what we want. And so there are a couple things that we're doing. You'll see displays such as the one on the screen at all of the different branches. We are also tomorrow launching a whole section of the website about intellectual freedom. One of the conversations that we've been having nationally, trying to learn from our partners in the South, is being a bit more proactive and not necessarily waiting for somebody to complain about a book or ask for it to be banned, but to actively have more information about intellectual freedom, what it is, why it's important. So we've introduced a whole webpage that points to the different policies that we'll have in place, the collection development policy, the internet use policy, as well as what it means to have intellectual freedom in our country. So definitely take a look at that. We're also just launched intellectual freedom training for all our staff. We've done it before, but again, there's been a national push, and the Center for Free Expression partnered with CULC to create kind of a core that each library then took and kind of expanded, so we're sending that out. It actually might be interesting to you, so I will be sending out a link to a video in case anybody's interested in watching it. I think it's about a half hour with that piece. The training that will be for staff, this is an introduction. There was a second piece that's more in-depth around case studies for them to really dig their teeth into, but this is just an overarching kind of introduction to make sure all staff are on the same page, because not all staff are library trained. And so we definitely, this gets drilled into our head when we were in library school, but if you're not coming in from there, it may not be as familiar a concept. And then,
1 second, we have a question from Rebecca on this matter.
Sorry, I just wanted to say for the intellectual freedom, I don't know if you saw, but I'm sure you did, the Toronto Public Library just released a new library card that says like intellectual freedom or something like that. And I thought if, card holder growth is still like a priority, to have like a different kind of face on your library card to be able to say this is like my ticket to like intellectual freedom might help you promote what libraries do. Also, it might just be a really great marketing tactic to like get people to sign up for new cards, and also just to get pictures to say like this is my ticket to intellectual freedom. So maybe not for this year, but maybe like planning for next year.
But just don't have that card in your wallet when you cross the border to the United States.
That's right.
Because you could be arrested.
That's right.
Yeah.
yeah, TPL is also a sanctuary library. So they've been certified that they will hold on. There's a whole section related to banned books with that piece. They've taken a really fantastic stand. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of what you're going to see on this webpage was adapted from them. And then, like I mentioned last month, we do have the Banned Book Tower art display that is currently being built. These pictures were taken earlier today at Central Library, and I went up to talk with Kelly McRae, the artist, just to check in, and he was having a hard time finishing it because people kept stopping him to talk about it, and some of them were completely flabbergasted by the books that he was putting into the display. So we were really excited to see that the community's already engaging with it. It should be completed tomorrow, and then we're officially unveiling it, I guess, on Monday at 11. Kelly is inviting a number of special guests. I will be there. If anybody from the board happens to be around Monday at 11, feel free to stop by. It will be up for the next 3 months, and there will be events surrounding it. We're going to have an artist talk, but that will be in March with that. So we'll keep you updated, but we are, over the 3 months, we are planning different events in order to have, really make sure it doesn't become a piece of furniture after a couple months, that we're continuing to engage the community about what it means.
Is anybody available to go to that to represent the board?
Monday at 11
o'clock. I'm in Trenton that day, so I can't go. Be nice to have somebody to make sure there's somebody there to hold up the board's flag. Not that we have a flag.
I know, it's not a great time for, but at the artist talk, you guys get plenty of notice for the artist talk.
Yeah. Well, if somebody could go, it'd be great, and just let folks know, just network and let them know the
And
board.
I'll follow up with an email tomorrow, just to remind everybody if they can come.
Well, he's the poster child for intellectual freedom in my mind, so I think you should be there. Okay, thank you. And just let folks know that, the board, this is a serious issue that the board, wants to, put a stake in, that we want to make sure that they know that we care about this? Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Rod?
Yeah, sorry to have missed my cue, but when you did Central, you said the asbestos had all been removed, which sort of is great news. But I thought that was going to be a longer task because it had to be taken out of the limestone or something you'd said last meeting. How did they manage to achieve this asbestos removal like that quickly? And are we confident about it?
They've been removing asbestos for at least the last 3 months.
Okay.
And facilities told me it was completed. I actually don't know the details of how it was done. I can follow up.
I don't think it was that extensive, from what I understand.
I
but
haven't seen anything on the outside or anything.
yeah, I think it's like pipe fittings and things like that.
Yeah.
But wasn't it like last time, because the architect was supposed to come and then the architects didn't come, it sounded like it was a major disruption.
That's a different issue. That was a foundational
That's
issue.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so asbestos was something that they started months
Yeah.
ago.
It was understood for a long time, since we bought
And
the
then
building.
nobody
Yeah.
could get in it while they were doing asbestos removal. People can get back in it. That was related to structural.
Yeah.
So we did hire a structural engineer, a heritage structural engineer, and they are reviewing the overarching structure to determine what its load bearing is, because we don't have any information. So we're not sure what the load bearing is of any of the floors.
Is there like an update since last month on how that is going?
No, we'll get that at the end of March. Yeah, my understanding is they're actually going to be testing it in the upcoming week. So they actually will bring in giant cranes and put the weight on top and see if it bends.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let us know what they've added.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to have board
See if I can
representation
get,
there.
maybe we'll get some video, because I know they had to
Bill,
explain that one to me. I was
volunteered to be
like,
in the building
"Oh."
to say, there's a crack.
Apparently that's how they do
Yeah.
the testing.
Interesting. Okay. We learn something every day. That's our learning for the day. That's how these test structures. Okay, since there's no further questions, I'll take a motion to receive the CEO's update. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Bill. I did see you, and I meant Rebecca, sorry. But it could be Meredith, I don't care, whatever. Just put somebody's name down there. Let's mess everybody up and put Andrew's name in there. And people say, he wasn't there?
See if Andrew catches it.
Yeah, exactly. He's usually the one to catch it too. He's our word cop. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the receipt?
Yes.
You can't go home until you vote. You're not in favor? Okay, there we go. Carried. That is received. Okay, members of the board, I want to draw your attention to the fact that there are no confidential discussion items. Is there any new business to come before the board tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Our date and time of next meeting is Thursday, the 20th of March, right here at Council Chambers at 7 p.m. And I will look for motion to adjourn. Celso and Bill? Oh, sorry. Who? Rod. Celso and Rod. Bill wants to stay. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for those who were watching online. We appreciate your time and interest in the business of the Oakville Public Library, and we'll be streaming again next month. If you ever have any questions, never hesitate to reach out and ask your questions. We certainly appreciate your feedback. And with that, have a great night and a great rest of the week.